Joining us right now is former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb. He's also a CNBC contributor, serves on the board of Pfizer and Illumina. Doctor, good to talk to you. It does look like we're doing somewhat of a better job at flattening the curve. That's the good news. My question to you is really the question every morning is, how does it change the timeline for you?
I think the timeline is what we've been talking about. I think we're going to see continued improvement through April. Different parts of the country are going to be coming out of this earlier than other parts of the country. And in May, we're going to be looking at opportunities to start slowly reopening aspects of the economy. And so through May, I think we're going to slowly start testing this. I would say, at some point in mid-May, you'd want to see a couple of weeks of sustained reductions in new cases before you start contemplating restarting businesses. But certainly by mid-May, we're going to be there. Some parts of the country may be slower than others. I think New York's coming out of it earlier than other parts of the country, but they were also harder hit. So I think there's going to be some caution expressed in New York in terms of how they go about doing that.
Right. Well, in terms of testing, both on the antibody testing, on just testing whether you have it, is there any news that you can share that is more optimistic about how quickly we will have that at scale?
Well, the antibody testing, there's a couple of antibody tests available. There's one approved. There's another one that looks like it's going to be on the market. There's going to be some data out probably this week from some antibody testing that was done in March. That'll be the first indication of what level of exposure there's been in the population. It's probably going to be low. It's certainly going to be under 10%. And remember, these tests have a high false positive rate. So if it shows 8%, it means it's really probably 5% in terms of the population that's been exposed to the virus, but it's probably going to be in a single digit, so not enough to create herd immunity. Maybe in select professions like healthcare workers, EMT, firefighters, grocery clerks, you're going to have higher levels of exposure, people who touch a lot of people as part of their job. And that might be something that you can use to help make decisions about return to work. As far as the testing itself, I think by May we'll probably have the capacity to test somewhere between 1 and 2 million people a week. Maybe about 1.5 million. It's not where you want to be, but it's meaningful. I think hopefully by the fall we'll be able to test about 1% of the population a week, which is about 3%, about 3 million, excuse me.
Doctor, real quick though on the tests, how accurate are those tests? And in terms of being able to get them fast, for example, I was on the phone this weekend with someone in the airline industry who was talking about, whether airlines ultimately could be that you walk into the airport and you literally are tested in the moment. You wait 5 or 10 minutes to find out whether you're positive or not, and if you're not, they'll let you on the plane. I don't know if that's even plausible, if they'll ever be able to get the test to scale and whether they're accurate. This person was telling me that they thought the tests, at least currently, were no better than 70% correct.
Well, the challenge is that a lot of the point-of-care rapid tests, like the Abbott machine, aren't very accurate. You do get false negatives with those, and that's why they're deployed in doctors' offices where you have sick people presenting, because they're likely to get treated regardless of whether they have a positive or negative test. So the test is sort of confirmatory in that setting. There are point-of-care tests that are very accurate, like the Cepheid Gene Expert, where you can literally spit on the machine. I mean, you don't need a very good sample to get a positive test because it's so accurate. We need to start deploying those kinds of platforms more. But in terms of using the test as a gating item, either to get back to work or go into places like an airplane, I don't think we'll ever get there. I think that's just a little bit too much coverage than we're ever going to be able to do. I do think businesses, though, that have employees that come into contact with a lot of consumers are going to advertise that they routinely test their employees, either a random sample or maybe just routinely test all their employees. So you could think that airlines will say, well, we put these measures in place to do fever checks and randomly screen our employees, or even restaurants could come together in local communities, buy a machine, place it in a local urgent center, and say we test all our workers, once a week. I think you're going to see that kind of activity on the part of some businesses.
Does a temperature check even matter, Scott? I mean, if you have asymptomatic spread, what good is a temperature check?
It's all layers of protection. I mean, a temperature check is good at discerning a small percentage of people who might have mild symptoms but still mount a fever. And so what we're really looking to do is put in place layers of protection. So the temperature checks aren't trivial, but they're not foolproof by a long shot, because you're right, there's a lot of people with mild symptoms who might not mount a fever, and then there's people who are asymptomatic. But you're never going to have a foolproof system. What you want to do is put in place enough safeguards in terms of human behaviors, people doing things that will reduce transmission, and in increased oversight. And so the temperature checks are going to be a part of that going into some venues. I think you're going to see fever guns, maybe boarding planes, getting off planes, going into stadiums, things like that. We will see that.